Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, Chapter 2, and we will cover verses 4 and 5 today. Eimaan in the Revelation and the Hereafter. So there is an important aspect here of Hereafter, but we will only briefly go into the details because this is a big subject in its own right. These are the references, and all these excerpts used in this talk are taken from the Meanings of the Quran, Volume 1. And this is our contact. Recap of verse 3rd, part 2. If you remember that we covered the second part of verse 3 of Surah Al-Baqarah. We covered the aspects of Eimaan and Eimaan in the unseen in part 1. In this presentation, we will share the next two important aspects related to establishing Salat as a system and making rizq bestowed by Allah available for mankind. So these two aspects were covered in our previous presentation. In verse 2, it is stated that the Quran provides guidance to muttaqeen, hudallil muttaqeen, i.e., who wish to remain protected from the dangers and pitfalls of life in the world. And we know these dangers and pitfalls are created by man-made systems. The system of Deen does not create any dangers and pitfalls because it provides complete security to mankind. Part of this procedure to establish the system of Salat after acquiring Eimaan is so that what is given in the Quran can materialize as a system in the world. This is the system in which Allah's laws are meant to be obeyed willingly and not mechanically. And this is an important point which we will be referring to throughout this work of the system of Deen, because we have to all the time be willing to follow this path. The moment that willingness disappears and we become mechanical, then gradually we give up that mechanical side as well, and we lose interest in the system of Deen. In fact, if we lose interest in any system, that system ceases to exist at some point in the future. And when established, it creates balance and harmony in the world, which cannot be acquired through man-made laws. Part of this system is the equitable distribution of rizq, and rizq we know means means of sustenance, all means of sustenance. And these means of sustenance should cover both human body as well as human self, and to meet the needs of the development of the human self. Ample resources and means of sustenance are kept on planet Earth for all times for the whole of humanity. These will meet the physical needs of the whole of creation, which includes mankind. Hence, if these means of rizq are utilized as per the guidance of the Quran, there will never be any conflict and chaos in the world. Now, an overview of today's presentation. What is revealed in the Quran is guidance for mankind and is not the product of human intellect. The human intellect has no inbuilt guidance, and whatever it thinks and decides, it comes from inside into the external world, because it is the product of our mind. We think about something, then decide, and then act on it. In the case of the Wahi of Allah, it descends from outside and its source is divine, cannot be human intellect. And in the case of this revelation, that is the Quran, it is not the product of human mind, because human mind does not think like that prior to getting this guidance. The whole point is to seek this guidance in order to change the output of our intellect. This Wahi of Allah in terms of its guidance is consistently the same from earlier times to the Quran. It was sent to various Anbiya prior to the last messenger, was tampered with by man, and was completed in every respect to meet the needs of guidance for mankind for all times in the book of Allah called the Quran. It is preserved and protected and will serve as guidance till the end of times on planet Earth. And this is a very reassuring aspect for us being finite. If we have the assurance of the values of the Quran, at least we know that during our stay on this planet Earth, we will have a life free from fear and huzn. Those who accept Eimaan in it hold themselves accountable as per the law of requital and have firm conviction in the life of the hereafter. By following the Quran, Mu'mineen acquire the guidance of the Quran and become eligible for all those benefits and successes which are intrinsically linked to obedience of the laws of Allah. Now we go to the first verse of today's presentation, number 4, another 3 aspects of Eimaan. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. These are those people who have Eimaan in all those truths which, O Rasool, have been sent down via Wahi on you, and which were given to the messengers before you in their respective eras, and which are now preserved within the Quran. The meaning of having Eimaan in these truths is so that they reach this conclusion based on correct historical evidences that action has been taken on this program many times before. Very reassuring, so study of history becomes important from this respect. And Quran has referred to this in many of its verses. And the very same outcomes have been generated by this which are now being promised. Hence, even now, the same results will be established. They have conviction in this way on this reality that by acting on this divine code, a new life becomes manifested, and in this way, by striving in the present, the future of man becomes brightened. That future, whose process is not merely linked to this world, instead, it also continues forward beyond death. Now we go to the first slide to explain this verse, number 4, explaining the mode of receiving Wahi, that is the revelation. We are discussing the traits of the Muttaqeen. The Quran has declared their next characteristic to be, and who have Eimaan in the revelation sent down. And the word used is nazal, to you. O Rasool, these are those people who have Eimaan in what we have sent down to you. As has been noted before, Wahi is the name of that special and unique knowledge which the messengers used to receive directly from Allah. By selecting the word Nazool for this, Allah has explained this reality in a very comprehensive way. The basic meaning of its root is to descend from a height. We will confine ourselves here to that meaning which signifies Wahi. So that means this root has other meanings as well, and we can have a look in the Lughat al-Quran. It is declared about knowledge, which is the outcome of human intellect, that it exists within man and emerges from there. In other words, you can view it as this knowledge rising up from below. So that is the case of human intellect. In contrast to this, knowledge which is bestowed from Allah should be understood as coming downwards from above. This is the objectivity of this knowledge for which the word anzal or tanzil has been used. There is no kind of human knowledge which does not emerge from the inside to the outside of any individual, i.e., in which there is no interference from his intellect and emotions. And this is a psychological issue, that whatever comes out of our own inner self, that will always be influenced by our intellect and emotions. And that is the problem we have. And that is why in the man-made system, we cannot have laws which are free from the human biases. And that is why we see all the imbalances in the world in various nations. Now, next slide is mode of transmission of the revelation. We cannot know, and no human being other than a Nabi can know what is the state of receiving Wahi. All that the Quran has stated is, for he brings down the revelation to the heart by Allah's will. O Rasool, Jibreel or Gabriel in English brings down this divine knowledge with the command of Allah on your heart. We have gone through this aspect under Surah Bani Israel. And what it means is it refers to the medium through which Wahi is revealed to the messenger. This knowledge used to descend on the heart of the Nabi as exact words. And that is important. The words of the Quran are words of Allah himself. This is why it is called Kalam Allah, that is Allah's words. Allah himself has declared that knowledge which descended on Rasulullah like this to be the Quran when it stated, it is we who have sent down the Quran to you by stages. Inna nahnu nazzalna alaykal Qur'ana tanzila. Rasulullah was commanded that whatever has been revealed in stages to him from Allah should not be kept to his own self, but should also be passed on to other people. Actually, there is another aspect of it, that when one gets benefit from the Wahi of Allah, that is as mu'mineen, then one wants to share it with others. This is inbuilt in this message, that we want to share it with others in order for the establishment of the system of deen. Because the tense used in the Quran mostly is collective, that is, come together and then establish the system of deen. It is only through establishing the system of deen in some piece of land that a model can be created, which then serves as a seed for whole of the world. O Messenger, proclaim the message which has been sent to you from your Rabb. If you did not, you would not have fulfilled and proclaimed his mission. So just note the word Rabb over here, which means Rububiyat, that it should include the aspects of human sustenance, both for the body as well as for the self. If you do not do this, you will be derelict in your duty of Risalat, that is messengerhood. In the performance of this duty of Risalat, and Risalat over here means that the message is passed to the messenger and he has to pass it on to others, not mechanically, but willingly. Rasulullah gave the Quran to the Ummah in a collective, written and organized form, which is continuing to be preserved with the Ummah right up until today without any alteration or modification whatsoever in a single word. And this can be verified. Without going into the mode of transmission of Wahi to the messenger, we can go through the Quran and figure out ourselves that this is not the product of human intellect. And we have covered this aspect previously as well. There is no matter in it which is either cancelled or tampered with. This is the Wahi of Allah, having Eimaan on which is a condition of being a muttaqi. Next slide, sole method of communicating with Allah. In order to be muttaqi, the first condition was to have Eimaan in Allah. After this, it was declared to be essential to have Eimaan in Ma anzalallahu. That is what was being revealed from Allah. And we can also say what was being sent down from Allah. In this, the first thing which needs to be understood is that our human beings' relationship with Allah is only through Wahi, that is through the Quran. Apart from this, there is no other means of connection with Allah. And since Allah's complete and preserved Wahi is now in the Quran, therefore the sole means of connection for us with Allah is the Quran. I have highlighted this line so that we can let it sink into our subconscious. When we study the Quran, then Allah is in conversation with us because this is Allah's word. And when we set out to follow its commands, we are obeying Allah, since He has declared the method for obedience to His orders and laws to be obedience of the Quran. Therefore, when the trait of muttaqeen is stated to be that they have Eimaan in Ma anzalallahu, then the practical meaning of this is that they obey the Quran. Thus, it is the divine command itself that follow, O man, the revelation given unto you from your Rabb, and follow not as friends or protectors other than Him. Little it is you remember of the message, which means that you should pay attention to it so that it sinks in and you start getting those benefits which are associated with the Quran and having Eimaan in it. And that is important because it is not otherworldly. The changes which take place within our psyche initially, those become an evidence in itself that what we have become from what we were before getting the guidance of the Quran. Next slide is the revelation is completed in the Quran. Whatever has been sent down to you from Allah, obey it, and other than this, do not obey any other. Though this is all that requires to be done, there are very few people who keep this reality before them. With reference to Ma anzalallah, we wish to confine ourselves for the time being to only this much. Otherwise, Ma anzalallah is the whole of the Quran itself. Therefore, discussion about it cannot be limited to this place or any other one place. It is stated about the muttaqeen here that they have Eimaan on what is sent down to you. Together with this, it has also been stated, and what is revealed before you, Ma unzila min qablika. And whatever, O Rasool, was sent down before you, they have Eimaan in that too. And that is an important aspect, because Wahi coming to human beings has to be consistent in terms of its permanent values, right from the first man on earth to the last man on earth. The question is, what is the purpose of having Eimaan on what was revealed before Rasulullah or the Quran? The Quran tells us that messengers kept on coming from Allah to every nation and in every era. The meaning of Rasool or Nabi is that they used to receive Wahi from Allah, and the Wahi of all of them will be included in Ma unzila min qablika, what was sent down before. So this is part of the Eimaan, because we have to strengthen our belief system that this Wahi is not exceptional to us only. It was the same code of laws which was revealed to previous messengers and previous mankind. So it is consistent across the board. And if there was any tampering, that was done by human minds. It was not that something has changed. So that is important to understand, because it has to be consistently the same. Previous books do not exist in their original form, an important aspect. And this can be verified if we understand the Quran fairly well and compare what is revealed in that. And for example, read the Bible, we will see that there is a lot which has been tampered. And there are some glimpses of some permanent values over there, but most of it, man's inventions or concoctions. But along with this, the Quran has also stated that those who claim to follow them, that is the books, tampered with whatever was passed to these Anbiya. Moreover, some books from among these also perished as a result of both earthly and heavenly calamities. It is possible that there are some commands in which there has not been any alteration and which are present in their original form in those adulterated books, which still remain in existence in the possession of those who claim to follow these messengers. But as we have noted in detail earlier under the subject of cancellation and revoking, and we can look at it in the meanings of the Quran, Volume 1, the style of Wahi has also been that from among the commandments sent down to the earlier Anbiya, new directives used to be passed on via Wahi to the Nabi coming later in place of those commandments which were not aimed to be retained, even if those commandments were present in the previous books in an unadulterated form. Next is, the Quran contains all that is required for complete guidance. In any case, after the revelation of the Quran, the position of the books which were revealed to the former Anbiya is such that, number one, not one among these books exists today in its original unadulterated form with any nation, because human beings are prone to tampering with the books of Allah, guidance, because they don't like it. These go against their desires, so they bring in their own desires into them, and as a result, the revelation loses its significance and cannot be of much use in terms of establishing the system of deen. This is not an unfounded claim. I have compiled a history of these books, and this is by Pervez, and I have proved through evidence provided by the scholars of these religions themselves that not one amongst these books exists in its original shape in which it was made available to their Nabi. He has produced a book in Urdu on the authenticity of the previous books and what do these mean as of today. All of the guidance sent to previous Anbiya, which was aimed to be retained in its original form, is compiled within the Quran. It is on this basis that it is stated in the Quran, "To you we sent the scripture in truth, confirming the scripture that came before it and guarding it in safety. So judge between them by what Allah has revealed and follow not their vain desires." A very important aspect, that do not follow the desires of anyone, follow what is revealed in the Quran, diverging from the truth that has come to you. Because then we lose the efficacy of the Quranic message, because it has to be implemented by that psyche which calls itself Mu'min and Muttaqi. And if that psyche is not Mu'min, because it has been contaminated by other ideas outside the Quran, then it is of no use to the system of deen. And that is how we should view it. All messengers of Allah deserve equal respect. The condition of religious nations of the world is such that every one of these nations calls the religion of the others false. The natural and essential consequence of this is that the founders of these religions are also declared as liars. Because of this, mutual hatred and enmity is born. And I've seen some of the Christian literature where Islam is considered as false and based on lies. And this kind of conclusion they draw from the sectarian versions of Islam. This is the basic cause of the perpetual discord and conflict among the followers of religions. The Quran provides teaching of large-heartedness and broad vision. It states to its followers that they should announce that we have Eimaan in all these founders of various religions, that they were true messengers of Allah. They came in their respective times with the true message from Allah. Although that message does not exist anywhere in its original form except the Quran, we respect all those Anbiya in the same way that we respect Muhammad, Rasulullah. This respect is a part of our Eimaan because we make no distinction, they say, between one and another of his messengers. And this is given in Surah Al-Baqarah towards its end. As far as there being a messenger is concerned, we do not draw any distinction among any of them. Few more aspects related to Anbiya. The Quran has mentioned the names of some Anbiya specifically and has stated about the rest that we have not named them. But when our Eimaan happens to be this, that messengers came to every nation of the world, then whether the name of any of them has been referred to in the Quran or not, respect for those who are called the founders of their religions by religious nations will become incumbent on us. We cannot even be disrespectful regarding the eminence of any among them. This will be counter to our Eimaan. Although if someone claims nubuwwat after Rasulullah, then we will call him a liar and will not count him among these Anbiya on whom we have been made duty-bound to have Eimaan. Allah has stated, have Eimaan in the revelation sent to you and sent before your time, i.e. whatever is sent down on Rasulullah and whatever was sent down before Rasulullah. In other words, there is no mention of the sending of Wahi after Rasulullah anywhere in the Quran, because the process of sending down Wahi was ended with Rasulullah, because he is the last messenger. And humanity in any case has reached that stage where they are intellectually strong enough to understand the Wahi of Allah. And then the Quran is preserved for all times and it has been completed. In a way, it is a blessing because there is no need for the messenger, and ordinary human beings should follow the Quran, making it as their leader, and then go on to establish the system of Deen and then manage its affairs by following its guidance. It should be made clear that Muslims will be included only within the Ummah of Muhammad and will also follow only the Quran. They will neither enter into the Ummah of another Nabi, nor will they follow the books connected to them. And I will say over here, Muhammad, peace be upon him. Last part of the verse, وَبِالْآخِرَاتِ يُوقِنُونَ. This is the last link in the chain of the traits of Mu'mineen which are being narrated, i.e. Eimaan in the hereafter. Where this trait is the last segment in the process under view, it is also the last segment in the process of understanding the constituents of Eimaan itself. The first segment in this chain is Eimaan in Allah, and the last segment is Eimaan in the hereafter. The practical meaning of Eimaan in Allah is to have Eimaan in the truth and firmness of the permanent, eternal, immutable principles, values, and laws of Allah. And the practical meaning of Eimaan in the hereafter is firm conviction in the life-giving fruits resulting from following these principles and commands, and in the humanity-destroying consequences of going against them, whether these manifest in this world or in the life of the hereafter. So important is that whatever we are doing now, it is bound to produce its consequences sometimes in the future. And since whatever we do has an impact on our own self, and this self is the one which will go beyond our physical death, that means we will reap the benefits of having a better self in the hereafter as well. In other words, Eimaan in the hereafter is another name for Eimaan in the law of requital of Allah. Because everything has consequences, and this thing should find very concrete place, should I say, very firm place within our subconscious. Akhirun, the feminine equivalent of which is akhiratun, is opposite to awwal, that is first or earlier. This word is used for such a thing which is coming after some earlier thing, but after which no similar thing comes. Instead, a new sequence commences. And this is very interesting in the use of this word, that whatever we are doing, it is transforming our psyche. And once our psyche is transformed, then that psyche further becomes transformed by stages. And same happens in the outer world, that the outer world also starts transforming in direct proportion to the collective psyche of a nation. By the term coming after is meant the future. It is from this that the word akharu arises, whose feminine equivalent is ukhra, which means such a thing which is completely different from its own former links. So there should be no stagnancy or inertia in the human world. It should be dynamic, and it should keep getting better and better with every passing week, month, year. Dissecting bil akhirah further. It has been stated above that the meanings of akhirah are that of the future. If we look at it from the point of view of these meanings, then the tomorrow to come of every individual is his future, farda. And that is why Quran has said in Surah Al-Hashr that every self should see that what it is sending forward for its tomorrow, that we should be extremely conscious of the fact that what we are doing today, how our thoughts are, how these are going to contribute to our future life. The next era of every nation is its future, whether it is a rise or decline. After every current generation of universal humanity, the generation to come is its future. And the life after death is the future of all of them. Two kinds of doctrines of life and systems of life based on them are to be found in the world. One doctrine of life neither accepts the eternal and immutable laws of Allah, that is Wahi, nor acknowledges the life of the hereafter. And that is, most human beings follow that kind of a precept and assumption in the world of today. This doctrine is called atheism, or a materialistic ideology of life, and the system based on this as being secular. Limitation of man-made systems. Under secularism, society has the authority to formulate laws, and the consequences of disobedience to these laws is also based on the justice system established by that society. For example, an accused is arrested by the police, and if the court declares him to be a criminal, he receives punishment for that crime. The first basic fault of this system is that it is society itself which formulates the laws, and whenever it wishes, it can also make changes and modifications in these laws. Hence, no one can have any certainty and assurance about how long the laws of today will remain in force and when they will be changed. And we can see that across all nations, the laws keep changing. Whatever suits the elite and those in power, or nowadays, of course, corporations, they slowly and secretly and sometimes blatantly change those laws, and public cannot do much. The second basic limitation is that if someone's crime does not come to the notice of the police, or if he makes such an arrangement that the court cannot prove him to be a criminal, then he simply cannot receive the punishment for this crime. Contrary to this, the law of requital of Allah is free and far above these fundamental flaws, because it is operating all the time. Even when human beings create a lot of favoritism for those at the top, the law of requital is also taking note of that, and its effects are always going to be negative, because whatever is bad for the mankind is not meant to survive. It is only the good should survive, which is meant to be for the whole of mankind. The law of requital in relation to the hereafter. In this, every deed of man is bound to produce its consequences according to the eternal laws of Allah. And it is not only visible deeds which fall within its grasp, even the deceptions of the eyes and the thoughts passing through the hearts are encompassed. It's a very important thing because those who who claim to follow the Quran, they should be fully aware of all thought process which is going through their head. And with practice, we can get used to it. We can become very aware of it. Allah knows of the tricks that deceive with the eyes and all that the hearts of men conceal. The important thing is that these negative or bad thoughts, when these arise in the mind, these do not arise because we want to bring them to our mind. These arise as a function of our brain, but we have to evaluate them and then only take forward those which are good for mankind. And here comes the Quran, which guides us on that and tells us the moment these thoughts come to the mind of those who have Eimaan in Allah, they immediately counter it. At one place, it states in comprehensive terms that of a surety to all will your Rabb pay back in full the recompense of their deeds, for he knows well all that they do. It receives every good that it earns, and it suffers every ill that it earns. This is so because the effect of every deed of man affects his self, according to the Quranic philosophy of life, which is based on fact. And carrying these imprints, this self remains in place both in this life and following this also goes forward. Hence, there is no question of any deed remaining unaccounted for. In the communal life of the Jamaat-e-Momineen, the establishment of a system of justice is also absolutely imperative according to the Quran. But despite thousands of precautions and safeguards, the possibility of some kind of limitation remaining in it cannot be ruled out. But the law of requital of Allah is free from these limitations. So human systems, these function under a lot of limitations. And of course, the biggest limitation is human faulty psyche, which is not in line with the Quran. Under the system of Deen, where people will be trained and educated and their self-development will take place on the basis of the law of requital, there will be minimum supervision required over there. They will not need so many surveillance and these cameras everywhere and monitoring them and spying on them. Because the best way is to leave human beings follow their own choices by giving them education, training, and help them to acquire a developed self. Every self draws the consequences of its acts on none but itself. No bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another. It's not a controlled environment. It is not to suppress their choices. It is to make informed choices. While people have a choice to go for the wrong path, they still go for the right path because it is their own self-interest to follow that path when they keep the life of the hereafter in mind. So Eimaan in the life of the hereafter is the basic foundational stone of the system of Deen. Evidence for the law of requital. So much so that in connection with this, it was also caused to be announced via the lips of Rasulullah himself that, say, I would, if I disobeyed my Rabb, indeed have fear of the penalty of a mighty day. And it's very clear from this verse, because the messenger himself understood very clearly from the Quran that this system of rububiyat is the need of mankind, which includes him as well. And it is important that if we are fed up with the man-made system, we follow this path because it is in our own interest to establish the system of Deen. For example, in today's world of 2024, we can see how much imbalance is in the world. And if we want this system to be replaced, then we have to at least, in first attempt, to know what is the alternative system put forward by the Quran. The effect of every deed of man becomes imprinted on his self. This is called his individuality. Referring to this individuality in a concise but extremely comprehensive manner, the Quran has proclaimed, and behold, you come to us bare and alone as we created you for the first time. And it is evidence-based. When we die individually. Even if there is a big bomb and many die together, The individuality still is there because they all had a self, and it is the self which goes to the next life, and the body just remains here. Whatever is yours, whether it is your wealth and possessions, or relatives and close ones, friends and companions, or supporters and helpers, you will leave all of them behind and will only bring your individuality in the form of a self to us. And the marks imprinted on it will themselves proclaim aloud all that you have done. So we should picturize it that there is a self, and with all those experiences, education, training, the values it followed, it becomes a new individual who is now going on to the next life without losing its identity. So I provides us identity that which we never lose, and it remains consistently the same throughout from beginning to the end. Today, these imprints are concealed from the eyes. At that time, these will become visible, just like the letters of words written in lime juice keep on appearing automatically when the paper is placed in front of a fire. It is these very imprints which are called the scroll of deeds of a human being. And we can check it as well. If our memory is working, we can recall many important events from our past life without even bothering about when did it happen, because those events leave a very heavy imprint, particularly the important events, on our memory. Metaphors related to the hereafter. What kind of state, form, and shape the life of the hereafter will be, and what the framework of paradise and hell will be, we cannot comprehend this at the existing level of our consciousness. About paradise, it is stated, now no person knows what delights of the eye are kept hidden in reserve for them as a reward for their deeds. Like every abstract reality, it has explained this metaphorically. It is stated in Surah Ar-Ra'd that the parable of the garden which the righteous are promised, beneath it flow rivers. And these are in relation to this world, where things are physical. But as far as the life of the hereafter is concerned, we can project our thoughts and then imagine that what kind of life that will be. And if we remember, Quran has said that those who are mu'mineen and qualify themselves for that stage of life, they will get whatever they wish. But that is also related to this life, that under the system of deen, as far as this world is concerned, whatever we wish, we can achieve right here in this life, in the physical domain. Similarly, it is stated about hell that the fire, the wrath of Allah kindled to a blaze, the which does mount right to the hearts. So it is an internal state of human psyche. Schematic on human creation. We create our own self. I have drawn this schematic. I thought I might be able to help in conceiving the issue of the hereafter to some extent. Here is a human mind, physical body plus our I, that is our identity, plus choice and intent provided brain, which gives mind. And intellect plus emotions plus desires plus senses. And all these are part of our mind, and we know about these. We know about our emotions, we know how the desires come. Some desires arise automatically, some arise, we trigger. And then we have 5 senses, all part of our consciousness plus self-consciousness. Because animals also have some kind of consciousness, but we are self-consciousness. That is, our consciousness is fully aware of its own consciousness. And that is the beauty of human creation. Choice and intent, these are our fundamental traits which we get through divine energy. And then this intellect plus, we create another self. And we create this self immaterial of what values we follow. Creating our self-concept, education plus training plus experience plus deeds. And if we are following relative values, then a different self is created here. If we follow permanent values, a different self is created. So two states of self are quite different, and Quran explains both kinds of selves very clearly. Now, if we are following relative values, then self-concept is created, which is based on relative values, will not meet the criteria of the afterlife. And very glaring example is the world around us in 2024, that all these people who are controlling the affairs of the world, their self-concept is based on relative values, which means these keep changing. And these will not meet the criteria of the Quran. Hence, no further evolution is possible. And this is a sad thing, that a self which is created, that is a self-concept which is created under the relative values without the guidance of the Quran, cannot go beyond the physical death. There is no evolution possible for that. And where is the evidence? The evidence lies within that psyche, which becomes an evidence for its own change. And those selves which are developing on relative values become quite different once they follow permanent values. Permanent values, and I've just put down two aspects here, Momin plus Muttaqi, in reference to our lecture of today. And I made it green that it is a different self-concept than this black one. And there is an inverse process now taking place in the hereafter, that this self, which has gone over to the next stage of life after tasting death, now it acquires a new kind of carrier, a new kind of vehicle which can express its developed self into the new world. Over here, this body was given to us, but over here, if we acquire this new self-concept through the permanent values, then we become eligible for getting the new carrier. So this is our own achievement, and this becomes the purpose of human creation. New medium provided to this earthly self-consciousness in afterlife, no further death. And this new medium which is provided to this consciousness is not going to face any further death. And over here, we do not know what kind of that medium will be, but we have to assume that this is a medium which is required in any case, just like our body. We needed body to express our consciousness in the outer world. That is why a consciousness is of no use if our body dies. So over here, we get this new medium. I hope this makes sense. Now we go to the next verse. The Quranic guidance is based on evidence. Over here, Quran says, Ulaika ala hudam min rabbihim wa ulaika humul muflihun. These are those blessed people who keep treading the journey of life under the guidance of the law of Rububiyyat of their Rabb. And these are the very people whose fields ultimately bear fruit. This is the category of those people who wish to avoid the destructive outcomes of the wrong path of life, and their desire is that the correct path of life appears before them. So it is beautifully summed up over here by the Quran, that they are the ones who are now working towards the system of Rububiyyat. They are now guided by Rabb so that they can establish the system of Rububiyyat. That Sirat-e-Mustaqim which they supplicated in first chapter, and they will get the benefits of their efforts, and their fields will now prosper. They will be able to bear that crop which they have sown. Human efforts on Allah's path do not go wasted. We started the discussion with the desire of the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen arising on their lips that we wish to be guided towards the straight and balanced path of life. In response to this wish of theirs, it was declared that you will be able to obtain this guidance from this book of ours. But for this, the first step is to become muttaqeen. What those traits and signs of the muttaqeen are is described after this. After stating this, the Quran declared, they are on true guidance from their Rabb, and it is these who will prosper. And the word uses muflihun. These people are the ones who remain steadfast on the path defined by Allah, and these are the very people whose orchards bear fruits. Muflihun is commonly translated as successful, but its meaning is far more profound and broader than this. In the Arabic language, agriculture or farming is called falahat, and flahun is the farmer. From this respect, muflihun are those farmers whose orchards successfully bear fruit. Illustrating through farming example. The Quran has explained the outcome and fruition of righteous deeds by generally using orchards as a metaphor. Just consider what kind of composition of constituents is required for orchards to flourish. First of all, such a seed in which there is the potential for growth. And over here, we create our own seed based on Eimaan, and we should keep that in mind and things will become clear. then such land which allows the latent potentials in this seed to become capable of manifesting. And we are trying through the Quran to acquire that land where we can establish the system of deen. And of course, this seed first grows within our own intellect. Then all those other physical resources, air, water, heat, light, etc., due to which this crop keeps on growing and flourishing. And together with all of these, that law and procedure of agriculture, according to which advantage can be taken of these forces of nature and physical resources. If there is a deficiency in even any of these things, then this field will not reach fruition. And if this effort meets all these requirements, then in the words of the Quran, every single seed will become 700 grains and will reach the farmer's abode. Very reassuring. Through this example, we see it being manifested all around us in the field of agriculture. And similar situation is with our efforts on the path of deen. That human efforts, these multiply. Initially, it appears nothing is happening, but gradually as the human psyche changes, Eimaan settles in, and then these things start expanding in the outer world. But these grains will be of the same type as the seed which was sown, about which it is said, what you sow, so shall you reap, i.e., that law of requital on which the whole structure of deen is raised. This is that tangible example through which human deeds generating their results, i.e., Allah's law of requital, has been explained. Another great fact is implicit in this example. The results of farming keep on appearing in practical terms, because of which man never remains in any doubt as to whether his efforts are in the right direction or not, and also whether these will even come to fruition or will go to waste. Continuing with the farming example, the farmer satisfies himself with this fact every day that these tangible results of his hard work, which appear gradually, provide an incentive for him, the consequence of which is that he puts in his maximum effort. And that is important. That is where the conviction of Eimaan comes in, and Quran helps to develop it and continue in this path. Of course, the difficulty which we have is because there is no system of deen anywhere. This got established once, and Quran has also said that previously these systems were established by respective messengers. If at any stage he sees that his effort is not succeeding, then he does not continue this fruitless endeavor. And that's important, that those who are treading on this path should continuously check the state of their psyche with the Quran as an external standard, and not to give up and not to assume that their self is developing, but it will only be developing if they compare it with what is given in the Quran as permanent values and stay together with those who are also on this path, because then they can check each other. He stops right there and takes full cognizance of this whole program. If he finds some flaw somewhere, then he addresses it immediately. This is called Tawbah. And if he sees that he is going on the wrong lines from the outset, then abandoning this program, he takes some other step which leads to an outcome. This fact is also implicit in this example of farming. The same also happens in ad-deen. Contrary to this, in madhab, that is the religion, the results of human deeds do not appear like this in a tangible and visible form. I copied and pasted it here because I thought it is important to understand the comparison between deen and madhab. Only this satisfaction is provided about them, that these are definitely bearing results based on veneration, but their outcomes will come in front in the hereafter. So a deen is about this life, because on this life, what we do over here, our next life depends on the outcomes of this life. In madhab, that is not the case. Over there, some ritualized practices are carried out. Those may be part of deen at some future stage, but if we carry out those practices without the system of deen, then essentially those will not bear any fruit in this world. This kind of blind veneration cannot face concrete facts, therefore it cannot progress in the light of knowledge and vision. By stating Fid dunya hasanatun, the good of this world, and by explaining it using the example of a farm, the Quran has turned the blind faith engendered by religion into the true reality presented by deen. Next is the system of deen takes shape just like the growth of a seed in soil. It was Rasulullah and his companions who were the first to act on and demonstrate the program of ad-Deen. The Quran has explained this practical program of theirs and its glowing results through this example and simile, where it states, like a seed which sends forth its blade, then makes it strong, it then becomes thick, and it stands on its own stem, filling the sowers with wonder and delight. As a result, it fills the kuffar with rage at them. They planted a tiny seed from which sprouted a soft and fragile shoot. Then it gradually became a stem and stood on its own feet. Then grains appeared in its ears, and the crop matured in such a way that the farmers' hearts overflowed with delight and joy on seeing this. And the breasts of the people, that is kuffar, who used to taunt and ridicule them about what a useless pursuit they are wasting their time and energies on, began to be convulsed with malevolence. And it's a difficult path. This path of deen is a difficult when there is no deen existing in the world, and the pioneers will always face difficulty and challenges of their own inner psyche initially, but they should continue because they are working as companions of Allah. After this, the Quran states that this is not just limited and confined to the mu'mineen and muttaqeen of that era only. Allah has promised those who have Eimaan and do righteous deeds protection and a great reward. It's worth going through this verse. It's quite long, but is beautifully put forward by the Quran. The Quran is meant to provide success in this worldly life, because this world also belongs to Allah, and this is the first stage of evolution of human self for the next stage, that they have to put an effort at their own by using their own choice and intent within the permanent values. This is the promise of Allah that whichever people, whenever and wherever demonstrate such an Eimaan and these kind of deeds, their forms will be protected from destruction and they will also attain full fruition. The name of such an outcome and fruition is establishment in the land, which is the essential and natural consequence of Eimaan and Salih deeds. The Jamaat-e-Momineen had said in their supplication that the path of the people on whose path we desire to tread are those who benefited from the bounties of Allah. They were not those whose terrain of efforts and deeds became charred and they remained deprived of these prosperities, who were condemned and misguided. This was not merely an idea from their minds or an abstract desire. The history and conduct of those nations which fell into this category was in front of the Arabs at the time of the revelation of the Quran. As the Quran itself has stated, at many places they used to travel day and night along those routes on which the ruins of the destroyed habitations of these annihilated nations used to invite them to learn a lesson and gain insight. In front of them also was the plight of the Jews going about in the land, who, despite being heirs of the glamour of Suleiman and the power of Dawood, had become the most disgraced nation in the world. Now, finally, to conclude these verses 1 to 5, the guidance you are desirous of is preserved in this code of laws of ours, in which there is neither uncertainty nor doubt nor any psychological dissonance. In the journey of life, this code of laws guides those people who wish to avoid the pitfalls of following the wrong paths towards the path that leads to the intended destination of humanity. And it's a great way to look at our life because it transforms our outlook completely. Having gone through these initial verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, we can see that how emphatically the Quran is putting its case before us so that we become attracted and get onto this path. These are the people who maintain a conviction in those truths which are concealed from the eyes, but whose purpose can be comprehended by using intellect and reasoning in the Quran, and who have trust in the outcomes of following the right course, which even though they are initially hidden from their sight, there is certainty in their ultimately materializing. Because in the physical domain, all results of our efforts do materialize. If people do evil, the evil comes out in the later part of the human world. And if they do good, that also materializes its effects. With this aim in mind, they established that system in which all people keep on following the divine laws, and after taking whatever is required for their own needs from the means of sustenance given to them, they keep the remainder available for the nourishment of the rest of mankind. These are those people who have Eimaan in all those truths which, O Rasool, have been revealed to you through Wahi, and which were revealed before you to the messengers in their respective times, and which no longer survive in their original and untampered form with their followers, and are now only preserved within the Quran. Having Eimaan in these truths means that through accurate historical evidences, they reach this conclusion that this program has already been acted upon many times previously, and every time those same outcomes have been produced from this which are now being promised. This is why even now those same outcomes will be reaped. They have conviction in this reality that by following this divine code, a new life emerges. And that is the whole purpose of human creation, that this new life emerges within us, and we are the ones who are catalyst for it. We do it ourselves through our own choice. We say that I don't want that psyche which is created within the man-made system. I want this new psyche, which the case for which is being presented by Allah Himself in His book, the Quran. And in this way, through the exertions of the present, the future of man becomes bright. That future whose continuity is confined not to this world alone, but which also continues to advance even after death. And the last point, these are those righteous people, that is muttaqeen, who continue to traverse the journey of life under the guidance of the law of Rububiyyat bestowed by their Rabb. And these are the very people whose fields ultimately achieve fruition, because they are following the laws of Allah. And Allah's laws are immutable, and they never let down human beings as and when they follow these laws. This category is of those people who desire to protect themselves from the destructive outcomes of the wrong path of life, and their desire is that the correct path appears before them. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen. Thank you.